They exploded 36 inches off the ground and 1,000,000 pieces went out. Can you imagine what they would do to a human being? I wonder how much fuel we used, how much oil we used. I said, why? What happened? He said, we didn't do the job. We got to go back. You left before I was ready, and you didn't know you were going to go, and I didn't know either. You didn't want to go, and I didn't want you to go.
This is Kyle Hunter and Elijah Fleming with Don't Mean Nothing. We're here with Angelo. Angelo, thank you for taking the time to sit down with us. We're here to talk a little bit about your background, your service, everything from your life story to where we're at now, and we're excited to talk to you.
Well, thank you. I was pleased to tell you my life story. I hope you enjoy it. I can start off with my uncle Paul Balducci was born in 1919 in December. His father died when he was only 28 years old. That would be my grandpa Pablo Balducci. And he died from the influenza that was going around in 1919. So he was only 28 years old. He died 3 months after before my uncle was born.
Wow.
So my mother, when my grandmother married again to a Panici and had 2 children by him, and something happened that they disappeared. And then she married a man named De Vera, Alexandra De Vera, and she had 3 kids with him. And then when my grandmother died, my mother took her 2 brothers, the Balduccis, because she was a Balducci, and raised them. So I'm talking, my grandmother died in 1930, the year before I was born. I am sorry to say that I never knew none of my grandparents. They were dead before I was born. On my mother's side, on my father's side, they never left Italy. They stayed in Italy. My uncle Paul, I grew up with him. I was a baby, and he went to high school in Thornton, in Harvey, Illinois. He graduated in 1937, joined the Marine Corps at that moment, went to boot camp in San Diego, and in September of 1937, finishing boot camp, he went to China, Shanghai, China, as an embassy guard duty for 3 years. Come back to the United States, stayed with us for a while, then his leave was over and he went to Kansas City, Missouri as a recruiting sergeant. Got my aunt to go with him, and they got married out there in Arkansas, Arizona. And what I meant, take it back, at Memphis. Then my mother went there for the wedding. He had my cousin, Paul Balducci Jr., in 1943. But my uncle, for some reason, and I can't explain to you what it was, volunteered to go in action. He didn't have to go. He spent 3 years in China. At the time, it was bad in China. So he didn't have to go. But his friends and all that were going, so he volunteered. My aunt came back to Harvey, and me and my brother used to go by their house and play with my cousin, and he went training. And I guess they had a code, and she knew that he was training to go to Iwo Jima. And my uncle was in the 5th Marine Division. The 5th Marine Division is the ones that put the flag up on Mount Suribachi. But he got killed at the base of Mount Suribachi. He was not a member of the team that rose the flag. What he did to get the Navy Cross was he took command of the post when the commander got killed. So he was in charge of the platoon. He exposed himself to Japanese machine gun nests to let his partners know where the gunfire was coming from. He personally, on his own, destroyed 2 machine gun nests with hand grenades. He personally, with assistance, destroyed 5 mortar nests before he was mortally wounded and got the Navy Cross. So in my fireland, that was a hero to me. And then when I got drafted, I went to Thornton High School also, and I got drafted. I got 3 deferments. Now, I was working at a company in Harvey called Perfection Gear. We went there after our high school, and I took machine shop in high school, and I just got promoted real quick at that Perfection Gear. When I got drafted, I was only 21 years old. The owner of the company said, "You're not going. We're going to get you a deferment." And I did get a deferment. And I got drafted again after 90 days, and once again I got a deferment. Then I got another deferment, and then I didn't get a letter saying that they'd give me another deferment. So my mother and family had a party for me. And that morning, I was waiting to get on the train to go to Chicago, and I get a phone call from Perfection Gear. "Come back to work tonight. We got you another deferment." So I ended up with 9 months deferment. And then they went with me, the owner of the company, the foreman, stood in front of the draft board, and they said, "We need him." They said, "How could a kid that's 21 years old, been with your company for a little over a year, 14 months, be so valuable?" And Mr. Daskell, Dave Daskell, his son, Dave Daskell Jr., tried to convince him that I was good. I knew what I was doing. Well, they said, "If he's that good, maybe we need him." So I got drafted into service.
So, couple of questions. One, I didn't say your last name. Can you give us the last name?
Angelo Marcheschi.
Marcheschi. I didn't want to mispronounce it.
My father was born in Colle di Capito, and it's all Marcheschis over there. A lot of people says that sounds more Polish than Italian, but it's spelled CHI, not SKY.
So, what year did you get drafted?
In 1952.
52. Got it. So the war was already going on in Korea.
Right, it was there.
And when they drafted you, did you get an option on where you were going to go?
When I got drafted, we got on a train in Chicago, and Harvey to Chicago, and my neighbor across the street from me practically, Roy Stevens, went with me. And we got down in Chicago, they said, "You're going to have the option to go in the Navy, Marine Corps, or the Army." And me and Roy said, "Well, we'll say the Army, we'll be together." So Marcheschi came before Stevens. And it says, "Angelo Marcheschi." I said, "I want to go in the Army." He said, "You're going to the Marine Corps." And when they went to Roy Stevens, he said, "I want to go in the Marine Corps." And he went in the Marine Corps. And I went up and asked him, I said, "Why did you put me in the Marine Corps? I wanted to go in the Army." And they said, "Well, you were actually picked before you got here. I don't know how or why." I said, "Then why did you ask me?" He said, "Well, if you'd have said Marine Corps, you'd have been happy." Anyhow, I went to San Diego. When we got to San Diego, Roy Stevens got food poisoning on the train going there, and he passed out right in front of me. And I dropped on my knees and talked to him. And this drill instructor with a Mameluke sword, that's the sword that the Marine Corps carry, slapped me with the flat edge of the thing. He said, "Hey, shithead, get off the floor. What are you doing?" I said, "That's my neighbor, my buddy." He said, "He is nothing to you. Get back in line." I knew then this was not a very pleasant place to be.
So let's rewind before we get to your service. What was your childhood life like? Did you grow up around here?
I was born in West Harvey, and my father worked for Al Capone. My father he made whiskey in the basement, and every 3-4 months he disassembled the furnace, the spiritual distiller, took it out, and we moved to another neighborhood. And I don't remember this because I was small. I remember when we were living on Levitt in Harvey, Illinois, West Harvey. The G-men, that's what they called then, government men, not FBI, it was the G-men, came to our house, and my dad was hiding under the bed, and I was hiding with him. They arrested my two uncles, my Uncle Paul, the one, and my Uncle Aurelio, my mother's other brother.
Related to Joe Aurelia?
That was in just Harvey, West Harvey, Illinois, on Levitt Street.
Is he related to Joe Aurelia?
No.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
No relation at all.
So was your dad in the outfit?
He was.
Wow.
Give my dad never went past the 5th grade in grade school. But give him a blowtorch and a soldering iron, and he was a magician. And that's what
awesome.
made it still. And they had a still out in Lansing, Illinois, out in a farm that wasn't working right. So they called my dad, "Louie, go fix it." So he went out to fix it, and the guy borrowed his car. Well, my dad got it running, and he's sitting there waiting, and he said, "I could see the G-men coming, but what was I going to do? I had no car. I couldn't leave." So he got caught. And they told him, "Don't worry, Louie. We'll take care of your family." My dad got 18 months in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, for making a still. Liquor was not done. Oh, we did not live nice. We were on relief. I did my homework with a kerosene lamp. We did not have electricity. When my dad finally got, after 18 months, come there and saw how we were living, very mad. Went and rented a house, and we went there. And I'll never forget this. One Sunday afternoon, this big black Buick drives up, and three guys in suits come up there and knocked on the door. And my dad went out on the front porch of the house. And they tried to talk him about going back into the mob. And my father said a few words that I cannot repeat. He said, my family lived like dogs. They didn't eat but garbage. You were going to take care of them. You didn't do nothing for my family. And he grabbed one guy by the throat, and I thought he was going to kill him. I'm serious. Three guys left the house. And my brother told me about this. I didn't know, but one day they were driving, my brother said he heard noise in the car. So they stopped and took the hubcap off, and somebody had loosened all the lug nuts. And they were rolling in there. The next day, my dad got out of the jet. He was working at Buda in Harvey, and the car was gone. They found the car in the bottom of the stone quarry in Thornton. So they got the last word. After that, they never did bother my father after that.
Must have respected him.
You know?
Did your father meet Al Capone?
When I was baptized in West Harvey, Al Capone made a stop in there when I was being baptized.
Wow.
I don't remember that. I was told that, okay? I was only, a couple months old or 3 months old? But he came when he baptized me.
That's
Came
incredible.
Stopped at the hall where my dad and mom were having and he stopped in and did his bit.
So I remember, my mom's side's all Italian. I grew up in Glenwood, down the street, 187th and Halsted. And I remember hearing stories for years as a kid, because my mom's side, the Italian side, always would talk about the Heights and how everybody out here was Italian. And I know my dad had a few friends that were mob guys, some that are still working in Chicago Heights now for the Chicago Heights City. What made you decide to never join the mob when you got back? Yeah, you.
I never had the choice.
Oh, okay.
And my father, when he left the mob, he was done.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know. When I went to high school, I took a trade course. I didn't take a college prep course. I took a trade course. And I was in machine shop for my junior year and my senior year, 4 periods machine shop. And I guess I was pretty good. I'm not just bragging to pat myself on the back. But my senior year, Whiting was another factory in Harvey, Illinois. They donated a bunch of lathes to Thornton. And my senior year, I was making parts for those machines. And Mr. Van Etten was my teacher. And I went and asked him, Mr. Van Etten, you're giving A to these guys, and I'm getting B pluses, and all I'm doing is making things for you. He said, Angelo, I think you could do better. So I got B's. But when I got out of high school, I had to find a job, and I went and worked at a factory called Hamilton Steel, and my dad had a 1937 Lincoln Zephyr. Now, he could walk to Buda where we lived. We lived on 152nd in Harvey, and I took the car, and they stole it. My dad got it back, and he stripped it and ruined it, but I went to my mom and said, I need a car, Mom. I want to tell you, as a kid, I grew up, I was a paper boy. That was my first job in Harvey. I had the largest paper route in Harvey. At one time, 130 papers. Then when I got old enough to get a driver's license, I drove a truck for the news agency in Harvey. And then my boss, Bob, he's, Angelo, this is not a future. You got to get a job where there's a future in it. And that's where I got the job. And then my dad would wake me up every morning, because I was working second shift, to go to Buda and sit there till the employment office door opened up. And the guy would look out. His name was Dempsey. He says, how you doing, Angelo? I said, fine, Mr. Dempsey. You got a job? He says, Angelo, all we're looking for is automatic screw operator. You ever one? I said, I don't even know what it looks like. And I'd go home. And I did that every day, 5 days a week. And then one day, I walked to Perfection Gear, which was right down the street from Buda in Harvey, Illinois, 152nd Street. They hired me as an automatic screw machine operator. 3 months after I worked for them, they made me a setup operator. I set up and operated my own machine. 3 months later, they made me a setup man. I was setting up those machines for other people. That's why they tried it and got me a deferment. They were doing government work. But then when I got drafted in the Marine Corps, I got sent to Jacksonville, Florida, A school, aviation training school.
Let's talk a little bit about your basic training.
Well, that's where I went to boot camp in San Diego.
Yeah. Tell us about boot camp.
Well, boot camp, the first thing they let you know is you feared the drill instructor. I was standing in line, and I was in front because I was small, and he hit me in the chest, bit my dog tags, knocked me through all 4 ranks, and he called me up and said, "You know what I did that for?" And I said, "No, sir, I don't." He said, "Your thumbs went along the crease of your pants." I learned now that they want the God of fear in you. So when he told you to shit, you say, "How much?" And if you think about it, when you're in battle and they say you go, you don't say, "Wait a minute, is it my turn?" You go. And that's what they're instilling you at boot camp.
How old were you when you got to boot camp?
21.
Gotcha. So you were a little bit older than some of the other guys.
I was drafted when I was 20, but I got those 90-day deferments, so it ended up I was going there when I was 21.
Yeah. And you feel like you learned a lot there?
I did. I met, when we went to Camp Edwards for rifle shooting, I met a man that was in the Army in the Second World War, but he got discharged after 9 months. So when the Korean War broke out, he got redrafted. And he took a liking to me. And he took me aside and he put a penny on the barrel of my gun. It had me squeeze the trigger and the tin did not move. He taught me, he says, "Angelo, when you fire for competition, they give you 10 rounds. Fire from different yardage. He says, take those rounds out of the magazine and just use 1 round at a time. You got 10 minutes to fire, 1 minute each." He says, as soon as you fire that round off, look at the sky, look at the grass, take your eyes off the target. Then load the gun. Don't put that shell in there until it has cooled off, because that's going to change the trajectory. I'm going to tell you what this happened. From the 100 yards, I had 10 in the bullseye. 200 yards, I had 10 in the bullseye. 300 yards, I had 10 in the bullseye. 400 yards, I had 10 in the bullseye. 500 yards, first shot was low left. Right away, the instructor said, "Angelo, 3 clicks right, 1 click up." The next 9 shots were in the bullseye. So out of the 50 shots, I had 49 of them in the bullseye.
Wow.
I fired expert. I got the expert badge. I walked in the front line of the platoon coming back to base. 4 of us was in that front line. This guy that taught me shot a perfect round, 50. He carried our platoon flag. I was right next to him. The other 2 guys, they all had had almost perfect rounds also. So yeah, I learned it. But once you got done with that rifle training in the Marine Corps, all of a sudden you weren't a shithead no more. You were now a Marine. You would qualify with the M1 rifle. We had 4 guys that did not qualify. They walked way behind the rest of the platoon with their jackets on backwards, their hat on backwards, the stock around their neck, and they would walk, "This is my weapon, this is my toy, and this is my weapon. This is for war, and this is for fun." And they walked all the way back to base like that, at least 10 or 15 yards behind the rest of the platoon. I mean, that's how the Marine Corps was.
Did you have a lot of guys drop out or quit?
I'm glad you brought that up. On the train going out there, all these guys that enlisted were singing "From the Halls of Mont" and making fun of us draftees, laughing at us, you draftees and that. We weren't there 2 weeks, and this one of the kids got caught pissing in his shoe, trying to get a discharge. The Marine Corps was not what he thought it was. It was just like I said in the beginning. They taught the fear of God in you from the drill instructor, and he could not take it. He wanted out. I don't know what happened to him. He got put behind. Even that Roy Stevens, the one that passed out, I never saw him again after boot camp. I never, and so we got discharged, and then ran into him, But boot camp, once you go to boot camp, you never have to go again. Never.
So what the last interview we did was with two guys that were at the Chosen Reservoir with the 1st Marine Division. And do you feel like that battle changed anything with the way that they approached boot camp and combat training?
Absolutely. The first thing they tell you, a Marine hits the beach. 75% of you are going to die when you hit the beach. He said, that's not a guess, that's an estimation, that's true. You were taught right from the beginning that that's what the Marines do. That's what the Marines do. They hit the beach. And if you think about it, and it wasn't the Marines that did it, was the Army. They went to Normandy and Omaha Beach in the Second World War. How many of those guys made the beach the first round? Not many. That's what it was, and that's what happened to Iwo Jima. My uncle Paul was the second wave that hit the beach. Not the first, the second, the 5th Marines, but he still got it the same way. Hitting the beach, you're in the fire, man.
So when you finally became a Marine, did you think about your uncle a lot and him following those footsteps?
Yes, I did.
Good.
I always did. I never forgot him. And and then when they sent me to Jacksonville, Florida, I didn't know what that was until I got there.
Did you volunteer for that?
No, I was put into it.
How'd they decide to send you that? Because of what you were doing for work?
Because of scores that I took in physics and other things. And I guess, I don't know if they knew about my history about, I used to hang around with Reuben Camp Airport. I don't know if you kids don't remember, it wasn't there. But the toll road right now in Hazel Crest, where the Colgates are,
Yeah.
that used to be Reuben Camp Airport. And I used to go there as a kid and fool around with the planes. And my first vehicle was a motorcycle, air-cooled and magnetos. Airplanes fly, air-cooled engines, magnetos.
Mm.
So I knew that stuff, okay? And when I went to A school, you got, just like in high school, you got airframe and engines. You got armament, loading bombs, loading the machine guns, loading the cannons. You got electricians to be in a tower, or be a radio operator. And then you got one that'd be for parachutes and that. And I graduated high at Jacksonville, so they tried to talk me to go to electronics school. But it was a 4-week course longer than the aviation machinist school. But I knew that I would do well in the machinist school. I knew that. I did good in physics. I don't know why. I liked it in high school. And I said, no, I want to go to aviation mechanic, and that's what I want. And that was in Memphis, Tennessee. So they let me go.
How long was that?
That was 3 months.
Wow.
I graduated with the highest score of any Marine or Navy. I graduated with an 85.9. I was number 1.
What was your MOS?
Aviation mechanic.
Got it.
They said that the top 10 per class, again, got their choice of duty station. My number 1 was Glenview. My number 2 was El Toro, California. My number 3 was in Miami, Florida. And we're standing on the parade ground, and they're reading off. There was a guy going to Glenview. I thought, I'm going to Glenview. I'm number 1, right? When they call off Private Marcheschi, DOS. That is duty overseas. I was shocked. My buddies standing around, they looked at me, what? So I asked for office hours. Office hours in the Navy or the Marine Corps, you see the commandant of the base. And they interviewed me, what's your problem, Marine? I said, sir, you told me when I come to this class, the top 10% got their choice of duty station. He said, so? I said, I'm number 1. And he gave me, well, this guy is going to Glenview. He's got a hardship with his family. He needs to be there, and blah, blah, blah. And he says, but first of all, and the most important thing, we got a war going on, and we need our best over there. So that's why I went to Korea. And I will get to me going to Korea, okay?
Yeah.
When I got on the boat going from Los Angeles to Japan, we passed the Hawaiian Islands. We didn't see them. But that took 13 days to go on that boat. We didn't fly there. We went on a boat. And landed in Osaka, then on a train to Itami. And Itami, we flew to Korea. When we got to Korea, I was put in Mag 3, Marine Air Group 3, and at K6. I was in Pyeongtaek Air Force Base, VMA 121. VMA is Vehicle Heavier in Air. I was an AD Skyraider. It could carry its weight in bombs. It was used in the Second World War, and he still used it in Vietnam. As the plane, and they said number 12 is your plane when I got to Korea.
These are the heavy bombers, right?
It's a bomber. It's an attack bomber. There was only one pilot. And I have never been on a flight line in my life. And I looked, I said, what am I doing? And this guy that had number 12, that's the plane they assigned me to, he said, come on, I'll show you what you got to do. I've never wagged a plane in. I've never parked a plane. I don't know how to do it. I never pre-flighted a plane. I don't know nothing you're talking about. That wasn't taught me at A school and B school. So he took me out and he showed me everything. Because he was getting ready to go back to the United States.
What did your job entail? So if you had to
plane
break it down.
captain's job was when that plane was on the ground, you damn near slept with it. You had to be close to it in case they had to get it in the air. You were there. The first thing you did in the morning was you got 3 other buddies, 4 guys, and you'd walk the prop through. And I don't know if you ever watched them on the movies, how they walk a prop through. You know what that's for? You can compress everything but liquid. You can compress steel, you can compress wood, you can compress air, but you cannot compress liquid. The aircraft engines do not have a sump pump, they got a dry fill. But the oil drains down into those cylinders, and if they dry to the bottom of the cylinders, because it's a radio engine, in fact, the AD Skyraider had 2 banks of 9 cylinders, so it's 18 cylinders. If that oil drops down there and you try to start it, you'd blow the head gas right off the machine. So you walk the prop through, all 4 blades. And if you got the 4 blades to go, there was no hydraulic. And I'd do my plane, we go to Nick's plane. The 4 of us would do 4 planes. Then you would get in the plane, check the oxygen. If that had 90% or better, it was good. If it was less, you went and got a new oxygen bottle. You started the engine. You waited till it warmed up. And then when I got there in January, February, you have to wait 15, 20 minutes to get warm. And then you hit a cycle. You run it up to 5,000, 6,000 RPM, and you shut off the right mag. See how many RPM it dropped. Then you put it back on both mags. You run it up to clean the plugs, make sure they're all running right. And then you shut off the right mag and turn on just the left mag. Because all aircraft have double ignition, 2 spark plugs, separate mags. It's a safety feature. And your mag drop could never be more than 15 RPM. If it was, you had to bring the plane in and fix it. And my planes always did. And then the next thing you do is fill up the gas that you used up while you're running it, check the oil, now to go in there and sign off the plane as ready to fly.
Did you have to equip all the armament too?
No. That was the guys that would come and put the bombs on, load the machine guns, load the cannon. They had a cannon go through the nose. Had 4 machine guns, 50 caliber machine guns. They would go to every 5th round with an incendiary so they could see it. They loaded the bombs. I had nothing to do with the armament of the plane. All I did engine. I was an aircraft mechanic engine. I know the engine and I ran the engine.
Wow.
And that plane was ready to fly. And they would. You've seen these movies where these pilots are walking with them and the parachutes flop on their butts. That's not true. We had 3 parachutes, large, medium, and small. And you knew who the pilot was going to fly your plane. 90% were medium. The base commander was a tall man, a big man. He would get a large. But I had 3 lieutenants who were smaller than me. And I'd get the smallest chute that we had. And you'd put the chute in the plane. Then when he'd get in, you'd strap him in, pull on the risers. I'll never forget this little guy, first lieutenant. He'd get all done and he'd go to risers and he'd go like this. He says, Angelo, you think I'll fall out if I need it? I said, sir, let's hope you don't need it, okay? And if the plane will fly and get you back and you won't need it. And I laughed. It was the smallest chute I had. I couldn't get any. He had a lap full of risers all wrapped up that I pulled on as much as I could. But that's what we did, or that's what your job was.
So what would happen if a plane went out on one of their missions? Well, how many aircraft were at that base?
A squadron consists of 24 planes.
Got it.
I had number 12.
So if the planes went out, they always went out together?
Very seldom did we ever send 24 planes. 99% of the time, we only sent 16 planes, and 8 planes were always left there. Most of all our squadrons set off for missions on 16 planes.
So when they go out, did you ever have issues where they'd get shot up before they came back?
Oh yeah, well yeah. I'll get to that story, but yeah, they would come back, and we lost the planes. God bless, I never lost a plane. All the year that I was there, I never had a plane abort. What that means, they take off, they start to go out, and the engine malfunction, it backfires, and they drop their bombs over the water because they cannot land fully loaded with bombs. They have to drop their bombs. And then they land, and then they chew out the plane captain, and just rip him into a new a-hole, okay? And I'll never forget, this guy was, the base commander would give the plane captain, who had the most shorties in a month, a case of beer. I won my first case. I got there in January. I won my first car in February, first case. And I won it 3 months straight after that. But the guy I took it away from was a guy from Poughkeepsie, New York. He was a Greek guy, George Akopoulos. And me and him was competing always for the best flight. I remember his plane come back one time because the pilot says that it was backfiring and missing. I said, George, I don't believe that. I said, let me run that thing. Let me start it up. He's go ahead. So I started it up. I cleared out the plugs because aircraft engines have a carburetor that is controlled by the atmosphere. The higher up you go, the less air you need. And if you don't lean it out, it's going to load up and flood. But you can override that to get more power if you needed it. Well, these guys would override it and load up their plugs and it backfire and all that stuff. And I checked it off and I ran it, burned it out, and that thing, just like I knew. He had a 12, 14 RPM drop, and we had the warrant officer come up to me. He said, what was wrong with the plane? And I said, nothing, sir. That plane's ready to fly. There's no reason for him bringing it back. He got me and George. Come here, I want to talk to you two guys. He says, that pilot was on his 97th mission. What I mean by it, a pilot flew 100 missions, and they got to go home. When they got in the 90s, they were scared. They wanted to go what we called a rest cap. Remember I told you 8 planes, they didn't fly for missions? Generally, they would go up and they had, instead of a bomb, they had 2 yellow kit survivals, 1 on each wing. If a plane went down, they would drop in that survival gear, fly until a helicopter and go pick up that pilot. And that's what they wanted to do. They got considered a flight then, and that's what they wanted. So he said, Angelo, I'm going to tell you what you're going to do. You're going to write and say that you replaced the automatic air system on the carburetor, that it was a malfunction. It was his 97th mission, and he just chickened out. As simple as that. So I wrote on it, I replaced it, and George signed it off because it was his plane. And that's how it had happened. But my plane never aborted. I flew there. My plane flew on many, many missions, never aborted.
So what would you guys do? Say a plane took machine gun rounds or anti-aircraft rounds. When it got back to base, how would you take care of the plane?
When the plane got back, the first thing you did was fuel it up, check the oil, and then you were done. Then the army would come out there and they would strap and reload the guns, all the guns.
But I mean, like if the plane was shot up when it got back.
Well, I had a master sergeant fly,
Mm-hmm.
and he would drop the bombs and he would fly through his own bomb fragments. And the first thing I would have to go through was the props would get nicks in it, so I'd have to file out so it was smooth again, and I'd have to go to the prop opposite and file in dents approximately the same distance to keep the balance. If he blew holes into his cowling, I had to patch it up, put a patch in it, put rivets and fill it up. You did that? I did that.
So you would be able to patch them back up to get them sent back out.
Send it back
Wow.
up.
Wow.
Right.
Tell us about. I remember a story you told me on the phone about the dam.
But the what?
The dam in China. Remember that?
No.
There was like a dam that you said that got blown up. when you were
Oh. What? My squadron, VMA 21, got 2 president citations. The number 1 president citation I was involved with, but VMA 121 dropped the most tonnage of bombs of any based squadron in Korea. The Air Force, with their B 29s, dropped more bombs than we did, but they were in Okinawa or Japan. They were not in Korea. But in Korea, VMA 121 dropped the most tonnage of bombs of any squadron in Korea. And we got a president's citation for that. The other president's citation is the Kochi Dam, if you could look it up. It was a dam built in 1937 by the Japanese when they occupied Korea. And it made electricity for China and North Korea. When they went up and bombed it with 16 planes, all they carried was 2 one-ton bombs and a belly tank with fuel to get there and get back. When the base commander flew my plane, and when he got back, he said, Angelo, I want how much fuel we used, how much oil we used. I said, why? What happened? He said, we didn't do the job. We got to go back. So I did. I told him what the fuel used in it. And he said, I used 2 gallons of oil? I said, that's fine. I said, number 14 used 4 gallons of oil. My plane never come out black like some planes come out black, burning the fuel. And he says, it's fine. You don't worry about it. It got your back, didn't it? So they went the next night. By the way, that was in June, the last week in June of 1953. Now remember that date. They went up the next night, same 16 pilots. This time, the only thing they did, they put a delayed fuse on the bomb. That dam was mostly an earth dam that the Japanese built in 1937. And this time when they dive bombed it and that bomb hit, it went deep into the ground before it exploded. And this time it exploded and destroyed the dam. We knocked out a huge piece of China, and the whole part of North Korea was out. Second week in July, that's 3 weeks later, they signed a ceasefire. North Korea couldn't do nothing. We knocked out their complete power, and they signed a ceasefire. Not a peace, not a surrender, the ceasefire. And if you think about it, that still exists today. They built the DMZ, demilitarized zone, but that war actually still exists today. But that's what the other president's citation was, blowing up that dam.
Wow.
And
So
when he got back this time, he told me, Andrew, we did the job. We don't have to go back. But when he flew, and most of the time when he flew, and they'd come back to the base, they would fly in a 1-21 formation. 1-21. 4 planes would take the 1, 4 planes would take the 1, and the other 8 planes would make the 2. We wore red scarves when we left the base with Wolfpack Girl, VMA 121. We had it where we go to flop shoot the PX, or the 9 officers come. We had to wear that. He wanted us to wear it, let them know that we were from VMA 121. I guess, like I told you when I got there, I never knew how to park a plane. And this guy showed me how to do that. Think about this now. I mean, you're responsible for that plane. And he told me, Angelo, never look at the pilot. Never let the pilot know that you just look at the wheels that you want locked and don't look at him. When I first started parking planes, I parked them so far down the end, I had a lot of room. I'm not kidding you.
Yeah.
I was afraid. And the pilots got mad because they had to walk so far. There was no Jeep to pick them up and carry them. They had to walk so far to get back. But as I got better, I got moving it closer and closer to the flight hangar. And this one day, I went out there and I stepped it off. I said, I can get that plane in there. I can get it in there. So he's come in and I'm giving him wags. And all of a sudden he's racing the engine. And I ignored him. Just get him. he started to fold the wings, and I slapped him out, put them wings back down, put them down. And then I guess he got PO'd. Okay. And he did what I brought him in, spun him around, brought him back out, cut the engines, chalked it, and I got up there to help him unbuckle up. And he looked at me and he smiled and he shook his head. He got out of the plane and he looked, and I don't think there's more than 12 inches from wingtip to wingtip and wingtip to wingtip. He went in there, and the gunny, that's the guy in charge of the flight wing, he was a warrant officer. He said, Angelo, come here, I want to show you something. In bold letters across the flight sheet, best plane captain in the Marine Corps. And that started it. From then, I was getting all kinds of notations like that.
Wow.
And then, like I told you about, I bought this Dodge pickup truck. 1999, 1990. In 1992, I got a recall on it. And I went to the Dodge dealer in Midlothian on Cicero Avenue, just north of 147th. And I went up to the desk for the, what's they call the guy, the service manager?
Yeah.
And I give him that, and he looked at me. He said, Angelo Marcheschi. Yeah. VMA 121. Yeah. 121 plane number 20, number 12 with Betty on it. Yeah. He said, don't you remember me? And I looked at him and, no. Don't forget now, this is 38 years later. That's 92 from 1954. He said, think about it. I was very unique. And I'm thinking, unique? What the hell is unique? I don't understand this. I mean, what's going on? The only thing I think is we had a flying master sergeant. And when he come back, I said, the only thing I can remember, we had a flying master sergeant. Yeah, that was me. He got, during the Second World War, a pilot got killed or whatever. He had a pilot's license, he could fly, and they commissioned him to be a pilot. He is the last non-commissioned officer that flew in the United States Marines. You cannot fly if you're not a commissioned officer, first lieutenant up. He was the last guy to do it. He was the guy that would come back with bomb fragments, because he would drop the bombs and fly right through his own bomb. That guy was good, and I knew it. And when he flew my plane, I hated it. I did not like when he flew my plane. But he's the one that told me, Angelo, he says, we had a deck of cards back in our shack, and they spread the cards out, and whoever drew the ace of spades would pick your plane. I mean, it made me feel like, wow. He says, everybody knew that when they flew your plane, they were going to come back.
Wow. So when you think about your service in Korea, give us what you thought was a pro and a con. What were you grateful for the experience, and what were some negatives from the experience?
During the war, when the war was in, that was up until July, you didn't salute an officer. Everything was, hey, buddy, and all that stuff. It was great. Once the ceasefire, it was back there. I mean, the planes weren't in rotation like we had, I told you, 24 planes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down the line. I mean, they weren't like that. I'd park it as close to the things I would. If it was in number 2 spot, I didn't give a damn. That's where I'm going to park it, you know. Once the war ended, everything had to be uniform now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12 of them way down the line.
More strict.
When you're walking down the street and you see a lieutenant, you stop and you saluted him. Never did that during the war. We slept in tents, by the way, in Korea. And we had air mattresses. And many times I'm throwing my socks or something, I take the needles, and there goes my air mattress. But that's how we lived over there then, you know. And it went back to being like before, and I didn't like that. I liked it casual. I mean, they talked to them like they were just you and me. After that, you're a captain, and I had to respect your rank, which is the way it is, and that's the way it always will be. But during the war, they didn't want that. They didn't want you saluting them. They didn't know if there was snipers someplace. And, you know, like, we got bombed several times. That's the closest I got. I had to go for being a plane captain. You had to fly 4 hours every month to get flight pay. So I went up 3 times. We had one plane that could equip the AD Skyraider that can carry 2 people. I went 3 times on a bomb run. That scared the living hell out of me.
Tell us about it.
I mean, when they got that anti-aircraft bomb going up, you know how an anti-aircraft weapon works?
Yeah, the shell explodes in the air.
It's set to go off at a certain altitude,
Mm.
and then it blows and spreads shrapnel throughout the sky, and hoping you fly into it. And so you try to guess to be higher or lower. You're guessing with them, and they're guessing with you. It ain't fun. And I did that 3 times, like I said. And after that, I went after the war though. Now the war was ceasefire. I still had to go up for flight pay. And you remember the plane that the first president, when he was in the Navy, they called the Glass House. They had a pilot, a co-pilot, and a radio man, and a gunner. There was a glass tube over the top. I went up for my flight time in that. And this guy used to try to scare us. He wanted to say who was going to puke first. I mean, he'd take that plane up there, stall it, and do belly rolls and did everything. Well, I never got sick. My dad taught me how you can fight motion sickness, and it worked.
How do you do it?
You just go with it. In fact, when the plane's going down, you're pushing it. When the plane was going up, you pulled it up. You went with it. You never fought it.
Okay.
And that's how you do it. And the way he taught me that, when we were small, me and my brother, my dad took us on the boat, got on Navy Pier, and we went to the David House in Michigan, House of David. And that Lake Michigan can be rough if you've ever been on it.
Mm-hmm.
And the boat going over, that thing was bouncing like a cork in the middle of the sea. And my dad took me and my brother to the front of that ship. He said, when it goes down, push it. When it comes up, you pull it. So me and my brother went up there, and we're pushing and pulling. He says, let's go eat, Dad. When we landed in Michigan, everybody was going up, how do we get back to Chicago on a train, a bus, or a plane? We're not going back on that boat. Going back, me and my brother and my dad were damn near all alone on that boat. But he learned that when he came from Italy to the United States. And that's how I did on that plane. But when we were up there doing this one time, we're coming back, and he says, I got bad news for you guys. And the other guy with me says, what's happened? He said, I blew the hydraulics. I can't get the gear down. I can't get the flaps down. So I'll go over and you guys jump. And I said, what are you going to do, sir? He said, I'm going to take it in. I said, you got company. And the other guy says, you got the company. We're riding in with you. I tell you, that pilot, we could not, the airstrip that we had in Korea was not concrete. It was a metal corrugated steel airstrip. When we got bombed, I'm telling you, the CBs were great. They would blow up that airfield. The CBs would go that night, cut out all the sheet metal that got bad, fill in the holes, and damn near in the morning, that thing was ready to fly again. I mean, the CBs them guys were fantastic. That airstrip was ready to go again. But anyhow, we could not land on that. We had to land on the grass alongside of it. And that sucker, he says, I'll tell you what, when the plane stops, get out of here quick. And that sucker, he brought that plane in, and you could feel it. He got the nose up, and he's dragging the tail. Then he cut the engines, dragging it, and then it dropped in, and the prop dug in, and it spun the plane. And then it stopped, and we got out.
Wow.
Got out.
Wow. That's something else.
Yeah, but you had, in order to get your flight pay, and I got $50 a month flight pay, I had to go fly 4 hours every month.
Tell us about the bombing runs that you went on.
Well, like I say, you didn't see anything with at night.
Yeah. Did
but
they always bomb at night?
But you saw the guns going off, and you could see them, and that scared the hell out of you.
Were most of the runs that they did at night?
Most of them were at night.
Yeah.
Most of the bomb runs were done at night.
So all those guys were doing those 100 times.
Right. I'll tell you something that people didn't know. Remember the Memphis Belle?
No.
Well, the Memphis Belle was a B-17 that flew the most missions in Second World War from.
Oh, okay.
It flew 25 missions.
Yeah.
Well, I had a neighbor that lived across from me in Gulf Vista. He was a pilot in the British Air Wing, and he flew with a British bomber. And he said he had over 37 missions. I said, bullshit. The Memphis Belle only had 25 missions. They're the only plane that did it. And he said, Angelo, I'm going to tell you something. And I don't think you guys know it, and I didn't know it. The British flew at night. At night, Messerschmitts could not fly. Radar was not in existence. So Messerschmitts, the fighter planes, could not go. Ack guns couldn't. They had to guess approximately where you are. The Americans flew in the daytime. All the Americans flew in the daytime, and they got shot up like crazy. You've seen pictures of B-17s, shot up from the Messerschmitts and that. And that was the difference. They flew in the daytime, and the British flew at night. And I never knew that, but and when the Memphis Belle made 25 missions, that plane's in Memphis, Tennessee right now. It's a historic site.
Wow.
And that's the same thing in Korea. I mean, we did most of our done with at night.
So tell us about how long were you in Korea total?
A year.
Okay.
January 53 to January 54.
So, and the ceasefire was in July, you said?
July of 53.
Okay. So in January they send you back. Was there a reception for you when you got home or anything like that?
When I got home, we came back to Northern route up by the Aleutians.
Mm-hmm.
It only took, like I told you, it took 13 days going, but only took 12 days coming back. But that was not a pleasant trip. The screws came out of the water you've seen those movies about the most dangerous occupations is the guys fishing for crabs and that, how that water is up there in the Aleutians. That's how it was. The screws come out of the water. And the Marines, by the way, got in the back of the ship. The Army got in the front of the ship. The Navy and the Air Force got in the middle of the ship. When them screws come out and we were in the back, them things screamed. They would come out of the water and come back down. I tell you, we made it back, and it scared the hell out of me. We ain't going to make it back. But we landed in San Francisco, and then they tried when I was in there, before I come back, this one gunny master sergeant kept bugging me to re-enlist. We'll make you a buck sergeant. We'll send you to C school. You're good. We need you. We want to keep you in. I says, no. I was still bitter that they promised me choice of duty station. When I was in Korea, and that just shows you, I was the #1 plane captain. I did my job, and I did it well. I took a lot of pride in that plane going up and coming back. But I never forgot that they did not honor what they told me. So I said, you're telling me now that I'm going to do this and do that, but I don't know if that'll be true. I want out. I want out. When I got to Treasure Island in San Francisco, that's where I got discharged at Treasure Island. They once again give me, join up, re-enlist. No, you've had all you're going to get out of this, man. And they wrote on my discharge, want to attend school.
So was there any reception from the public? Did you see anybody?
When I landed from Treasure Island at Midway Airport, O'Hare Airport was still a military base. All we had was Midway. My mother, my father, and my fiancée, Betty, the greatest woman I ever had, was waiting for me. That's the whole thing. People, you got to understand this. In Vietnam and in Korea, you didn't stay the duration, you stayed a year. If you lived it, you get home. And every month there was people coming home. And the other factor I want to tell you is the people in the Second World War was in there for duration. They didn't come back until the war was over. And they won. We did not win in Korea. We did not all come back at the same time. I come back, with a bunch. And no, there was no reception. And that's probably why when I went on the honor flight, got to Washington, D.C., all these people are waiting for you, celebrating, hugging you, welcoming you.
Let's back that up. Let's start with, tell us what the honor flight is, and then walk us through that whole experience.
Well, the honor flight, from what I understand, is a young lady, her father wanted to go see the memorials. Korean Memorial, Vietnam Memorial, and the World War II Memorial. So she took her father there, and she said, I bet a lot of veterans would like to see this. So she started this program, going out getting solicitation, because the the honor flight, I flew for nothing. Every man on that plane had a wheelchair. So don't give me an excuse. My dad couldn't make it. He couldn't walk. They pushed you. When I got, to, like I told you, this one Dan Anfield, this one nurse, she was from Christ over there in Oak Lawn. She pushed him all around Washington D.C. That nurse did. I walked a lot, but the guy that I met him in Washington D.C. He was like an umbilical cord. He would never move farther than me and you right now. If I went to the bathroom, he was right there with me. And we were walking to go to the to the Korean Memorial. He said, Angelo, let me push you. We'll get there a lot quicker. Because I wasn't walking very fast. And so he pushed me. And when we went to the World War II, he pushed me. In fact, the pictures of me, I'm sitting in the wheelchair in the front row. He put me right in the front row, so I'm in all the pictures. And the guy was tremendous. I mean, they made you feel so welcome. I'll put it this way. We sat, and I said, let me buy you an ice cream. He said, you don't buy me nothing. I buy you.
So the purpose of the flight is to take veterans to the memorials?
To the memorial.
Got it. Okay.
When you land, the only one that we stopped, we drove around. We didn't stop at the cemetery. We drove through it. We did not stop at the Iwo Jima. But we stopped at the Air Force with the shooting. We stopped and got out there and walked around that. I got a lot of pictures of that. And our next stop is right in front of Lincoln's Memorial. That's where the bus stops. And then you walk. And it's a long walk to the Vietnam Wall and a long walk to the Korean Memorial. And then you went there, and then you got back on the bus, and then you drove to the World War II Memorial. And can you believe that the first thing they built was the Vietnam War, and then the Korean, and World War II, and now they just made World War I. That's kind of backwards, isn't it?
Yeah. Tell us about the pride involved in being a part of that process and that flight.
It's hard to tell you because it's just so exciting. When we got back to Chicago was the biggest thing. The way they set up at the airport in Midway, they, instead of people standing 5, 6 deep, they made it like a snake. So there was only 2 or 3 deep. Because every one of those people wanted to shake your hand or give you a hug. Everyone there. Kids from 3 years old up to 70 years old. Standing there waiting, hugging you, welcoming you back. Man, I mean, as soon as you got off the plane, there was a Navy man, grabbed me by the arm, took the sack that they give me, and he carried it and walking. And these people just grabbed me and hugged me. And, oh man, if that doesn't bring tears to your eyes, nothing will. And like I said, the greatest day in my life was the day I married my wife. But that came so damn close. It's every man that I give an application to go, and I've passed out a lot of them. And then I would ask them, what did you think about the flight? And they would say, Angelo, it's what you said, if not more. I'm telling you, if you know nobody that wants to go, tell them to go. It's something that they'll never forget. And they are taking Vietnam veterans now, because the Korean veterans are almost done.
So you just mentioned the greatest experience of your life was marrying your wife.
Yeah.
How'd you meet your wife?
On a blind date.
Really? Let's hear that.
Well, me and a buddy, Jerry Smith, he's passed away now. We were drinking buddies. And he was dating this girl that worked in the city. And I was dating nobody in particular. I picked up whoever I found. And this one day, she wanted to go out with us. And he said, you got to get a friend from my buddy. I said, well, I got a girl that works with me. I'll ask her if she wants to go. So that's how I met Betty. I'm going to tell you this, and maybe I shouldn't, but the first night we went out, we went to a drive-in. And we bought a case of, a 6-pack of beer. And we drank our beer. And we stopped at this tavern in Phoenix. You know where Phoenix is at? And we were at this tavern, and the police walked in. Now, I didn't know, but Jerry Smith had gotten in a squall with the police force in Phoenix. So they walked to the bartender and says, check that man's ID. Well, both of us, I was under 21, I was only 19 or 20. Jerry, I graduated in 49, he graduated in 50, so they arrested him. So Betty and I and his girlfriend, I went to Jerry's house, got his mom, and she blamed me for him drinking, but it wasn't me. He's the one that drank. Got him out of jail. And out at the age, I had a 1941 Chrysler Fluid Drive. And I used to take care of that car, And I went and I was cleaning, and I seen my class ring in there. And I called up Betty. I said, Betty, I found my ring in the car. She says, yeah, I left it there. I said, what happened? You don't want to go out with me anymore? She says, no. I said, why? She says, you drink too much. I said, if I quit drinking, you go out with me? You quit drinking, I'll go out with you. Well, obviously, you see what happened. I quit drinking. I'm serious. I quit drinking, went out with her. And when I was in the Marine Corps, my dad used to go pick her up. She lived in Chicago. She went to Fanger High School. And my dad would pick her up on Winkett and bring her into Harvey. And while I was in Korea and in the Marine Corps, she went to Ascension Church and changed her religion and became a Catholic. And they say a conversion Catholic is better than an original Catholic. And she was, I swear to that. But she did all that when we got back and got married. I'll put it this way. I tease her about it. When I got off that plane, at the bottom of the steps was a guy waiting to measure me for my tux. The wedding was done. Everything, the reception, I didn't have to do nothing to get measured for a tux. My mother and father and her mother and dad and they did everything. Everything was. All I had to do was get measured for a tux.
Wow, that's awesome.
And yeah, it was a blind date, and I tell you, it's the greatest person I met in my life.
When you think about Betty, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
When I think of her now, just her. Just the woman that she was. The mother of my children, they couldn't have a better mother. She died when she was 72, much too young. And I also put that by her. I'm going tomorrow for Mother's Day. But I write a thing, and I read in there, you left before I was ready, and you didn't know you were going to go, and I didn't know either. You didn't want to go, and I didn't want you to go. And that's the fact, She was having trouble with her knee. And I said, well, let's call the paramedics. She said, no, I'm not going out. I'll go see my doctor Monday morning. This was a Saturday. Okay, so Sunday night I put her to bed. And I slept in the other bedroom because she wasn't feeling well. I went to wake her up Monday morning. She was dead. Tough. Not tough on her, but it was tough on me. And always will be. I'll never forget that day. Yeah. The police come. They put a policeman by the door. My kids were all there. And they wouldn't let my kids go in the bedroom. The policeman said, no, nobody can go in there. And I got mad. I said, you think I killed my wife? Are you stupid? That's my wife. That's her mother. You won't let them in to see her? He just looked at me. He didn't say a word. And there was a police officer that I played golf with. He was a retired policeman in Mantino. I don't know how he got there, but somebody called him in with the wife come. He got on his hands and knees in front of me about that chair and took me in his arms, and he started talking to me because the fire department was ready to put me in a straitjacket and take me out. I went ballistic. I went out, and he talked me back to earth. And he's passed away now, but he's probably the best man of my life. It wasn't easy. And I hope to tell you, I miss her till today.
How old were your kids?
When she died, well, my daughter was born in 60. My oldest son was born in 64. My youngest was born in 68. My wife died in 2006.
Wow.
So they were all married. She got to see her grandchildren. She never got to see. I got 5 great-grandchildren, by the way, which I'm very proud of. I got 9 grandchildren, which I'm very, very proud of. And she didn't get to see all this.
Do you still feel her presence now?
Oh, definitely. I think of her every day. I don't know how to put that to you, but I do. I like I say, I go to the grave on our anniversary, on her birthday. Uh, I used to go and put a wreath there, but now the snow, I can't do that no more. And so my grandkids and my daughter-in-law, they go and they make sure the Betty's got a wreath by her stone, and I'm very proud of them for doing that now. But I go, but I can't do that. You know.
When you think back on the life you've lived a very full life, a lot of experience. What are some things that you would say to the youth that might be watching this? Anything that you could give them for advice for their future?
Well, I'm going to say that you should respect your parents, number one. And this is something that I was taught by my parents. I always called the people next door Mr. Beetle or Mrs. Tibby or Mr. I always said Mr. And they don't do that no more today. Respect your elders, in other words. My dad taught me never be late for work. My dad taught me that don't ever miss work. You don't get paid when you stay home. The work habits I learned from my dad. I was a steward and a grievance man in the union. I had one man. When I was running for office. I ain't gonna vote for you. And I said, why? He said, because you hollered at me more than the foreman. And I said, what did I say? You hollered at me that you got three kids at home that you're raising, and I don't want to come to work and raise another one. And I want to ask you, is there an excuse for being late to work? There is no excuse for being late for work. If it's a train, you leave earlier. I had this one guy that had flat tires, furnace not working, hot water tank not working. Every excuse you come in a book, and finally they had to give him trade it off. And he's spraying to me. That probably was a legal excuse, and the other were lies. And they're going to catch up to you. I thought, you can count on one hand. I've been here 30 years, and you can count on one hand how many days I was late.
Where did you retire out of?
Out of Ellis Chalmers, and then when Ellis Chalmers, the government, we were the last company to make lift trucks in the United States. When they went out, then I went to work at Modern Drop Forge in Blue Island, and they hired me, and they, once again, my expertise in the machine operator. There isn't a machine that is made that I'm not afraid to run. And I used my talent, moved me right along, and they said, Angelo, if you work for us till you're 65, we'll pay for you and your wife's insurance, because I only had 9 years, and at that time you have 10 years to get vested rights. But we'll take care of you. Well, after 2 years I retired in 96. 98, they called us in and says, not only me now, all the retirees, they no longer are going to pay for their supplement insurance, that we had to pay for it ourselves. That's when I went to Blue Cross and Blue Shield. So I retired from Modern Drop. Perfection Gear, they closed and moved to Darlington, South Carolina, and I got a job working at Ellis Chalmers immediately. I knew I was going to get hired there. And then I went there and worked there till they shut down. And then I went to Modern Drop, and I would have got in there sooner, but they were having a union conflict. They were the steelworker was trying to get in there, and they weren't hiring anybody with them for freeze and hiring. If I got a job up in Worth, Illinois, running the machine, and then when Alice Chambers, one of the owners, farmer, called me up and asked me, what are you doing, Angelo? I says, I'm working at this thing. Oh, yeah, we make forgings from us. Yeah, I know, I machine them. You still want to come and work for us? I said, yeah, I'd like to. He said, I don't know what you're making, but I'll give you 50 cents an hour more than what you're making if you come and work for us. So I went back to, but I said, if you don't mind, Mr. Farmer, I'd like to give them a 2 weeks notice. They give me a job when you guys didn't. He said, no, he acknowledged that and give me credit for that. So I went back to work, and a guy named Harvey was my foreman. He come around, and I said, I got to talk to you after you're done, okay? Okay, so when he got done with his business, took me in the office, says, I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice. I'm quitting. He said, why? I said, because I'm not a machine loader. I'm a machinist. I said, you can get a high school kid to load and unload this machine. You're not using my skill and talent, and it's a waste of my time. I got a chance to go to a plant where I'll be a machinist. And he said, Angelo, we're paying you more money than we're paying the guy that set up the machines you're running. I said, I appreciate that, but I'm telling you why. I said, you want me to run your machine shop, making your fixtures, making your thing? He said, we farmed that work out. I said, well, that's the trouble. If you did it here, I could do that. So I left. And then the owner of the company come and got me, took me to the office, and give me the same story, and I give him the same thing. And then I went to Modern Drop Forge.
So I got two things that I want to ask you, two remaining things, and then I'll let Elijah ask you whatever questions he's got. First one is Elijah and myself, more so him than me, believe in God, obviously, and Elijah's more of the organized religion, and I practice my faith in my own way. How did your faith in God help you throughout your life? I know you said you're a Catholic.
I believe I'm blessed. I believe I am 92 years old, and I think I'm blessed. I don't know if he has something for me to do yet. I believe he does. He hasn't told me what it is, but I believe I'm blessed. I believe he controls what I'm doing, what I'm saying, and he's kept me here this for 92 years, going on 93 very shortly. August, I'll be 93. And I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe in the Virgin Mary, which most churches don't. But I do. I think she was forever virgin. I know they came to read in the Bible that she had 4 sons. But if you if you read in that time of the period, Joseph was previously married, but it doesn't say. It says very little in the Bible about Joseph. If you read the Bible or any part of it, there's about a space about like that about Joseph. But the Catholics believe that he was married before and had children. That wouldn't make him Jesus' brother. Not really, because she was incarnated by the Holy Spirit, not by Joseph. But, and that's so she is, and that's, I do believe in it. I am a Catholic, and like I was going to a lady not too long ago, and she belongs to another church, and I told her, I says, I was born a Catholic, and I'll die a Catholic.
So I'm sure your faith has grounded you through all these years.
All my life, yes.
Yeah. The last thing I have is tell us a story about your dad with the motorcycle.
Well, my dad jumped ship in California, and it was still work in San Francisco. They were building the steel mills in Gary, Indiana. That's back in the early 1900, in the teens, okay? And his other sister lived in Gary, and all her sons and everybody worked at the steel mills. And she told my dad, if he got to Gary, he can get a job real quick, So he had an Indian motorcycle. And don't forget now, we did not have interstates. I'm talking about in 1918. He drove an Indian motorcycle from San Francisco to Gary, Indiana. And they were belt driven, not chain driven. And how he did that, I don't know. Now, the only thing I can't tell you, and I wish I knew, how he met my mother in Chicago Heights. How he got connected with Al Capone. I never heard that story, so I can't tell you.
That's incredible, though, that he rode all the way across the country like that.
Oh, yes. From San Francisco. I mean, you're talking, I don't know what kind of roads they had.
When did your dad pass?
My dad died in 1975. He got a stroke. In 1969, he got a stroke, and he lost his speech. He was paralyzed on his right arm and right side of his body. My mother took care of him for 6 years, and then he went into a diabetic coma and died.
Wow.
And he was going to be 75.
Sounded like an incredible guy.
Like I said, my father was, he never went past the 5th grade, but when he worked for Buda, and then Alice Chalmers bought Buda in 1958, he made a fixture to make these parts for the engines, and he could make them so fast that he used to store them. And whenever they need them, he'd go to his locker and say, here's how many you need. Here you are, and he'd get paid for it. And when he went to the company and he wanted to sell them the fixture that he made, they told my dad, Louis, you made it on company time and you used company material. So, well, that's company property. My dad said, oh, okay. So he went out and got a torch. And he burned that thing up with a torch. He said, now I burned it with a company torch and on company time, and that's what he did. My father did not believe in the unions, and I did. But the union saved his jobs a couple of times, and that was one of them. And another time he did something that he shouldn't have in the union, but he did not believe in unions. And maybe what he's saying is true today. I mean, salaries that they got today made the prices go up. I mean, if you get a raise, somebody's got to pay for it. And it's at the point now, I know, like I held every office but president. I was vice president. I worked for when they go to Washington and being a lobbyist for the steel workers. They would tell me, Angelo, we're going to go to Springfield or we're going to go to Washington. Joe Germano was the leader and his son-in-law was in charge of that. And I would go and we would rent a suite and wine and dine these guys. Like things are done. Just like in the state of Illinois, you will never get rent control. Never. Because all those people that own them big buildings in Chicago, they got lobbyists down there in Springfield lobbying those senators, and they'll never pass it. You'll never see that in the state of Illinois.
Yeah, I'm very pro-union. My dad, who you met, was Local 710 for almost his whole career, so it's awesome to hear that. Elijah, you got any questions?
Dad was born in Italy.
Correct.
Did you have any connection with the family in Italy? Did you ever go over there?
I never did. I went to Italy, but I never got a chance. I went to Italy, me and my wife went there in 2004. But we went with a tour, and we went, there's one place, and I brought pictures of where my father was born in Colle di Capito, Italy. It's a suburb of Lucca. Lucca is the only city in Italy that has a wall all the way around it. And I showed this pictures to this one waitress, and she said, right now you're only about 15 minutes from your father's hometown. But I couldn't leave the tour, so I didn't get to go. But when we got to Venice, I worked with a young man that he worked with me at Alice Chalmers. Albert Frigo was his last name. When Alice Chalmers closed, him and his wife moved back to Italy. He was born in Italy. When me and my wife got to Venice, there was a knock on her door, and there they were, Alfredo and Adelia. And I don't know how they did it, but they talked our tour guide to let them take us for a day. So I didn't go to Venice. I went with them, and he lived in the Italian Alps. It's 3,000 feet right off of Venice. We spent the night with him there. And he said, next time you and Betty come to Italy, fly to Milan. I'll pick you up, and I'll take you where your father was born. But I don't know about you guys, but I have never met none of my grandparents. My grandfather, I told you, died in 1918 from the influenza. It was Pablo Balducci. My grandmother died in 1930, and I was born in 31. And my Angelo Marcheschi, my dad's father, died in Italy. I never met him. And my grandmother, she died a month before he did in Italy, so I never met them. I never knew none of my grandparents. You don't know how blessed you are like me. I feel grandkids, great-grandkids. I feel, like I said in the beginning, I feel very blessed. I mean, how many people get to do that? But I don't know, what else would you like to know about my dad?
Well, growing up through the time frame you did, you would have graduated high school just a couple of years after World War II. As a child, what was your perspective of this global conflict?
You know, I can remember when my uncle got killed, and my mother cried when they sent the letter to my mom's house that my uncle got killed, and that was during the war. And we had a flag hanging in our window with the stars. Then my mother had her brother, and she had two brothers. Three brothers. One was in Italy. The other, my uncle Mike Panici, he was in a medic in the Normandy landing. He got the Silver Star, got the Purple Heart. But I didn't. I don't know. It was a war that I didn't really understand. You know, 1941. I was like, 10 years old, and when the wars broke out, I'll never forget when he come on the radio in December 7th, 1941, and the Day of Infantry. I remember that, and yeah, and then selling war bonds and that.
Well, you were almost old enough to go, because if you were born in 31, you would have been 15 in 46, right? I guess you were a couple years too far behind.
Yeah.
Did you ever think that it was going to go on long enough to where you'd end up having to go?
I knew I was gonna. When the Korean War broke out, I knew that was gonna happen.
Yeah.
Because I had a lot of my friends that did go.
I mean,
Like-
for World War II, did you ever think
No,
that
I
might-
never thought I'd make it World War II. It ended in August of 45. I was 14 years old. I was 14. I turned 14 in August of 55 because I was born in 31. Do the math, I was 14. So no, I had there was no doubt that I would ever go to the
Yeah.
Second World War. Yeah.
Yeah.
With your dad being Italian and like the Italian position in World War II, was there ever a conversation about how he felt about any of that?
No, but my dad, I put it this way though. Like I said, the guy never went to school, but when the war broke out, they came and took all the radios out of our house, and they were ready to deport my dad because he was not a citizen yet. He didn't become a citizen in 1948. But Buda went to battle for him and got him to stay here because they were making military things in there, and Buda got him from being deported.
Wow.
But they were going to deport him because he was an Italian. We had no radios in our house, no kind of a radio. I remember that.
Wow.
During the war, I was 12, 13 years old, and I couldn't listen to the ball games, whispering Joe Wilson. But he never got bitter about that. I mean, he knew what the fact was, and then as soon as he could, when the war was over, he wanted to go back, but he knew he couldn't come back so he got his citizenship. I went down to Chicago with him when he got his citizenship, and then he went to Italy, and he owned a farm. Him and his father. He was sending my grandfather money, and they bought an olive farm, and that's where he went back, and it was just gone. So he hired like a sharecropper to get the farm back to life again, and he was doing it and making it. My dad just paid him whatever he needed to keep it going, and then when just before he wanted to go back with my mother, but my wife got pregnant with my youngest son, and she says, "No, we're not going to go back to Italy until Betty has the baby." My mother was afraid that my dad was going to get a one-way ticket and stay there, and she was afraid of that. And then he got the stroke, and then like I say, a year after that baby was born, practically the baby and then he never got. My mother did go. She went to Italy, and when she was there, she met her sister-in-laws and that. She was there for a month, and she came back, and she talked to me and my brother. And in Italy, you almost have to sell to a relative. And it's not easy to sell property in Italy like it is in this country. In this country, we got, what do you want to call it? It's free enterprise, right? Sell it to anybody you want, whatever price you want. It's not like that in Italy. And so she talked it over with me and my brother. I said, "Mom, sell it. I'm not going to Italy." My brother said the same thing. "Mom, sell it." So we went downtown Chicago to the Italian embassy and got it set up, and we sold it. And she paid off my house and my brother's house, the money she got for the farm and whatever, But she sold it, and because I wasn't going to go there. And
There's something I've always found really interesting is the treatment of different countries and different people during World War II. Like, obviously, Japan attacked the States, right, Pearl Harbor, and they put a lot of Japanese people in internment camps.
Correct.
Then Germany called home any male that was of a certain age to come home to fight for the fatherland. So a lot of German Americans had left to go back to Germany. Did Italy do anything like that with Italians?
I can't tell you that. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I didn't. My father, well, how old would he be?
40 probably, right?
Yeah, well, he was born in 1900.
Yeah.
So the war broke out in 41. He was 41 years old.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think he was wanting to go back to Italy.
Questions from you? So I have one more question that we can end with. I once again thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. The two of us truly enjoy talking to people like you, and you've been such a pleasure to speak with from the beginning. So we love that you were able to sit down with us today. If there was one thing you wanted people to remember you by, what would it be?
That I'm a God-fearing man. That I went to war and I killed. You can say, no, you didn't. I killed because I loaded that plane and I made it fly. And I knew what that plane was going to do. And I didn't know if it's going to kill children and women, but they're going to drop bombs. I'll never forget one day early in there, I walked out to start that plane up, and I ran into this rod sticking out from the front of that plane. It's 36 inches. And I looked at them bombs, and they were only 250-pound bombs, but they were like a coil with indentations in it. And after I pre-fired it, I went to my buddy and said, what the hell are that? You know what he told me them were? They were anti-personnel bombs. They exploded 36 inches off the ground, and 1 million pieces went out. Can you imagine what they would do to a human being? And that bothered me. And I said that to my priest. I said that to the deacon. And they told me that I am exempt for that. If you read the Bible, there was wars always was wars. And I said, then change the word, thou shalt not kill, to thou shalt not murder. I can understand that, but it says, thou shalt not kill. And indirectly, I did kill. And that bothers me, yeah. And I let them know that. And they said, Angelo, you're going to heaven.
I hope so.
But you understand where I'm coming from.
Of course, yeah, of course.
I mean, it's there, thou shalt not kill.
So, so when you talk about what you want people to remember you by, you said God-fearing man. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
That I was a good father, that I love all my children, that I raised them right, they're good people in this world. Every people I meet, I hope to be my friend. I always want to be your friend and your friend. I hope you remember me as a friend. It bothers me when I know somebody don't like me or is mad at me. I just don't. I feel uncomfortable about that. I want everybody to not love me exactly, but like me. Just be like me. Be nice to me. That's all I ask. That's all I want. And when I go, I want to know that I liked him. He was a good friend.
Angelo, once again, we really appreciate you having us over and sitting down with us and doing this interview. We appreciate your service.
I hope it don't bore people.
No, it was a great talk. Well, thank you once again, Angelo.
Okay, friends. Korea, Vietnam, all these wars were unnecessary wars. All they did was kill people. You know how many people died in Korea? 45,000 in 3.5 years. 45,000. In Vietnam, that was an 11-year war, and there was 55,000 dead. World War II was 400 and some thousand died in World War II. So all war does is kill people. What have we proved by it?